Yup. Wonder if that caught that. Hello, welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant. This is going to be episode number 611, and it is behind the scenes. And that means it is not a finished video.
We're only 300 episodes away from this being a really uncomfortable title.
Oh, well, that is 6 years, so it's a while. It's definitely.
Right? I guess it is right. Yeah, it's about 6 years. Yeah,
approximately.
I should probably start stressing about it now, though, right?
That's right. Yes, let's worry about the worry to come. Very productive.
You know me so well.
But yes, so behind the scenes, that means it's not a finished video. I mean, I got a green screen beside me that's just green, hasn't been filled in with Tom's lovely face yet. And yeah, that'll happen in the completed version of the video, which usually posts on Wednesdays. So that's what you want to look for if you want things cleaned up, particularly the audio, because that for sure will be the clean thing. Yeah, I guess that's about it. That's the warning. You've been warned. This isn't a finished video. And switch over to Tom. He can start when he pleases.
I don't really feel like doing the podcast tonight. Can we just skip it?
No, not for the whole week.
All right.
You'll feel better when it's done. We always do.
I know. I always do. I know. It's like a Band-Aid. Got to rip it off. 2 hours of very slow ripping it off a week.
Peeling.
All right, here we go. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. But is that a new wedding band on your finger? Looks different than your old wedding band.
Oh, yeah. So I stopped wearing my wedding band like years ago. In fact, I didn't wear one for about 2 years because from climbing, my knuckles got kind of enlarged, so I couldn't get it on. And I will not climb with a ring on. I don't climb with the ring on because if you have to ask, take off safe search and Google degloved.
Ooh, yes.
Climbing.
I know that term. That's a scary thing.
It is a scary, terrifying thing. Well, I stopped wearing my ring because I have a white gold ring and it was deforming, slightly. And then somebody posted some pictures on rockclimbing.com forum about degloved something or another. And I was like, okay, never wearing a ring while I'm climbing again. Yep. Well, these are sizing rings. So they're like these little silicone jobbies, so they're like rubbery. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but whatever, they're rubbery, and I can wear these when I climb because they're going to break, but long before anything happens to me. And my wife got them for me for Christmas, I think, and they were like $4 or something. She got me. I have a black one, a white one, and 2 different colors of gray, so I can like match it to my shirt as I have done today. Very nice. But and then I saw online, like on Amazon, advertisements on YouTube. They were advertising the silicone rings. I was like, "Oh, these are much cooler than the ones I have. They're like $50 or $30 or something." I'm like, "It's too like I think it was like 50 cents a ring." I mean, yours are a little bit thicker, a little bit nicer, and then you could put like your favorite sports team on it. But who gives a crap? $2, I'm going to pay you 30 or 50 or whatever it was for it. It was ridiculous.
Good profit.
So I love them. I love them. I love it. It's the best thing that's ever. The best thing that's ever happened. Let's be reasonable here, but it's a very nice thing that happened to me. I was able to start wearing my wedding ring again.
Okay.
My wife never really complained about it, but I'm sure at some point she was like, hey.
Well, she did get them for you, so
she did. I asked her to, though. I asked her to get me something. I wanted like I had a while ago looked into rings that you can take on and off, that detach or whatever, that open up. But they're real expensive. They're really stupid expensive. So whatever. This worked out perfectly. All right. This is not the Ring podcast. This is the AV Rant podcast where we answer all your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com, which is now working again as of the first of the month.
Good stuff. Yes. We were alerted by several people. Yeah.
End
of the month, bandwidth exceeded.
We're going to talk about that in a second. Okay. All right. We're talking about it. So www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, which is the easiest way to get in touch with us because apparently they don't run out of bandwidth. They're Facebook. you can also reach us at, well, you can see us at youtube.com/AVRant. You can comment, but I don't know that we'll ever see it. Contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at AVRant_Tom for me. Yes, the website was down for the last weekend. Whatever. I did post a podcast though, right? I posted it this morning.
You posted it this morning when the website was back up.
The website was back up, right? So we'll talk about that. Okay, so our listeners of the week. Let's do listeners of the week. So we've got Michael is our first listener of the week. Michael went to www.avrant.com when it was up and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There he was able to give us a PayPal donation, which goes into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees. So thank you very much, Michael.
Yes, Michael, thank you very much for the donation. We appreciate that.
And thank you to our 72 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up and it will take a monthly stipend from you and give it to your content creators of choice, and to have whatever dollar amounts you designate, the least being 1 and the most being infinity. So somewhere in there, if you feel like you want to give us a monthly donation, patreon.com is the way to do it.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. And thank you very much to our 72 patrons.
And lastly, if you can't support the podcast financially or have no desire to, and you do want to support us in another way, just let us know what you did, whatever that might be. So Rob W, he let SVS know that his PC 2000 subwoofer purchase was based on our recommendation. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Rob, that's great. Congrats on that purchase, and thanks for letting SVS know.
And we're also going to thank 2A, who we mentioned last week, offered to help us with the podcast feed. And when I was like, I'll get around to it. And then the website went down. I was like, I guess I'll get around to it right now.
That would be a good time to get in touch with 2A.
Well, he wasn't able to actually get into, you can't actually even get on the back end of the website when the bandwidth is. So I couldn't give him access to the back end until today. So he just sent me an email, and obviously he offered to help. I assume he knows what he's doing. I've just given him unfettered access to the website. So who knows what he's doing. We see a bunch
of gambling posts. We'll know who did it last time.
So 2A is currently working on it. He says that there is something broken, which we knew.
That is not surprising. That seems like it could be the case.
There's supposed to be some compression going on, and instead everything's going out uncompressed. All the file, all the images, all the podcast feed, like each feed or whatever is like 100% uncompressed. He's like, this thing's supposed to be working. It's not working. I need access. I'm not sure why, and there's an error message, but I can't read it. So if you can get that to me, so I'm working on getting that to him.
Alrighty.
But thank you 2A for helping us out. So anything you can do would be fantastic.
Definitely looking forward to not running out of bandwidth every month. That would be preferable.
The big culprit is the feed. The feed is not being compressed. The robots are hitting it like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 times a day.
Sure.
And
I thought that was coming from Libsyn, but
no, the files are. The feed comes through our website.
I see.
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
So we'll hopefully by the next week we'll be reporting that it's fixed.
Fingers crossed.
Then I'm going to beg 2A to fix my own personal website, which has been broken for about 3 years. It's very embarrassing, and I can't seem to fix it. So I tried. All right. In the news via Donald, one of our listeners, Donald thought it might be useful to know about Monoprice's growing selection of whole house audio amplifiers. I don't know why I have a hard time saying whole house. Just something about that. In addition to their 12-channel distribution amps and 6-zone matrix amps, they also got a Class D stereo amp that offers 100 watts per channel for $165, which is about twice the wattage of the $100 stereo amps we sometimes recommend, but not twice the price. And a wall-mountable 35-watt per channel stereo amp with a subwoofer output for $180. It's basically an alternative to a sound bar for a wall-mounted TV. So stereo amp.
Yeah. So some nice products there at fairly attractive prices, and it could definitely be useful. Thanks, Donald, for the heads up.
Yeah. Facebook showed off their Oculus Quest virtual reality headset. It is fully self-contained. It has no wires. Graphics aren't up to the level of an Oculus Rift attached to a high-end PC, but the Quest has all the same movement freedom and motion sensing rather than the more limited Oculus Go or smartphone-based VR headsets. It uses 4 super wide-angle camera/sensors on the headset to track your positioning, handheld controllers, and objects/walls around you. They're saying it'll cost about $400 with a spring 2019 launch date. I mean, $400 is pretty attractive.
That's just it. This is starting to get to where I'm like, okay, I could see this becoming attractive now, because the whole I'm tethered by wires was unattractive. The price of getting $700-800, that's definitely something you got to consider. But like $400 fully self-contained still gives you the full access of movement. It's not like the Go that was more limited. Graphics are pretty darn good. Resolution is higher than 1080p. So like per eye. So it's pretty impressive sounding. They did mention when they were covering this over at Engadget and The Virgin that they're like, no word on battery life, and they did seem to be charging them frequently during the demos. So that could be an issue for sure.
Right.
But, nonetheless,
wait for Tesla to come out with their batteries that wears backpacks.
Yeah.
All right. The Cavo Control Center is something that I came across today. Seemingly fixes a lot of the shortcomings of the original $400 Cavo. To start, it's only $100. So what is it? It's a remote control. Okay, it's kind of a remote control.
Kind of, yeah. It's like a hub.
Yeah,
it's like a remote hub.
So the thing that attracted me to this product, we haven't tested it, I haven't touched it. I just found out about it like literally today.
Well, it's not even available to buy yet. This is like a preview thing that went up today in the news.
But the thing that's attractive about this is we've had people who've been like, I've got these 4 things that I want to, and I need an HDMI switch, and this is it. This is like an HDMI switch with a remote control. Yeah, it could potentially be. Yeah, it's $100. Although you have to pay an ongoing $2 a month for Cavo service, which is lame. And it supports HDR, although Dolby Vision support is awaiting a future update. It has 4 HDMI inputs instead of the $400 one had 8, but it still auto detects what you've plugged in and constantly watches each device interface to make voice navigation as simple as possible to work with Amazon and Google voice assistants. So you're not just locked into using the Cavo remote, and it gives you one interface and then unified search across all your source devices. You can set this thing up so that you're like, okay, when I want to watch Netflix, I want to watch it on this device. When I want to watch Hulu, I watch it on this other device. When I want to watch Amazon Prime, slap me in the face because lip sync sucks on that thing. Oh, I watched the Blair Witch Project with my 12-year-old son. Don't judge me. The original one.
Yep.
I was streaming on Amazon Prime. The lip sync was like seconds behind, but the movie is already so terrible. As far as the video quality,
the visual
and all that,
quality.
It was like no one's gonna know this, but it was driving me nuts. So Amazon still sucks. So, but I think this is an interesting solution for those people who are like, I need something for my parents, that will 100%. And this thing, apparently, when it works, it's like smooth as butter. The problem
is just it. Well, to explain it a little bit, it's so you plug all your sources into this.
Right.
It has its one HDMI output that could go directly to your television, or that one output could go to your AV receiver if you have a full surround sound system. So it is essentially acting as an HDMI switch. But what it's doing is it's using machine vision, they call it, to actually like quote unquote see the interface of, say, your Apple TV or your NVIDIA Shield or whatever device, even your Blu-ray player. And when you give a command like you don't even have to say watch Netflix. It can be like I want to watch Stranger Things, the exact show. And it'll be like, okay, I'm going to search all the services and find that show. Okay, it's on Netflix. You've already said when I watch Netflix, I want to use my Apple TV 4K to do that. It'll turn on your TV, turn on your AV receiver, turn on your Apple TV 4K or wake it up, launch the Netflix app in the Apple TV 4K, and it can use IR, RF, Wi-Fi, IP control, or Bluetooth. So it's got all the things built into its hub, and it'll do all of that as one gigantic macro that you don't even have to program. It like figures out, okay, I need to turn on all these things and use this device and navigate myself to the show that you asked for. The issue is when it works, it's like magic. It's amazing. The problem is when it doesn't work 100% correctly, because it doesn't give you the individual device control that you can still do with, say, a Harmony. Right? With a Harmony, if something goes wrong, you can still revert back to, okay, you know what? Something went wrong. I'm not exactly sure what. Pressing help didn't fix it. So now I'm going to resort to controlling one device at a time, which you can still do on your Harmony remote, and manually go through until I figure this out. On the Cavo, you don't have that recourse.
Right. The Cavo, if you want to fix it, usually the solution is to shut the whole thing down and start over from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, you know what? Honestly, for the people that
easy enough to explain,
are,
right?
Yeah, the people that I would be recommending this thing to, I'm like, yeah. So, it should always work, but if it doesn't work, just shut it all off and, turn it off and turn it back on. That's my IT solution to everything anyways.
Well, see, the thing I'm worried about is it can use HDMI CEC, and it will attempt to. And it's like, okay, so it just sent out an IR command and an HDMI CEC command. Oh, there you go. Now it doesn't work anymore, does it? Because HDMI CEC.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Yep. Anyways, it's an interesting
certainly
solution,
for $100. Yeah, that makes it very.
I don't understand why you need us to pay $2 a maintenance fee. What is this, like, shakedown?
Well,
crap.
So I'm pretty sure this box isn't as powerful as the original Cavo. So I'm betting they're running some of this in the cloud. Rather than it all being on the box itself.
I mean, if your internet goes down, your remote doesn't work. The thing that was bugging me about the article, though, the guy was like, this is way less complicated than the Harmony program. I'm like, how could it be less complicated? How could it be less complicated? The Harmony, I mean, it could not hold your hand through the process any more than it already does. It's so ridiculously easy. It's like plug the remote into your, like, turn on the app. The app's like, you need to plug in the remote, and this is where the plug is, and this is where it is on your computer. Plug it in. You plug it in, like, okay, good job. High five.
And to be clear, Harmony hubs can still do more than the Cavo because Harmony hubs can do all kinds of home automation stuff. They can control your lights. They can control your garage door if you want them to. They can do all that kind of stuff, and Cavo doesn't do that just yet. Also, you mentioned, but no Dolby Vision just yet. Waiting for a future update for that on the Cavo.
Well, it hasn't even really come out, so I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, saying that you're waiting for a future update for a product that hasn't been released is kind of ridiculous.
But I'm almost thinking, if you have a little bit simpler setup, this could be very, very compelling.
Yeah, if you've got like a sound bar, a sound bar and a TV,
and a couple of different streaming sources, and you just want to be able to say out loud what show you want to watch and have it all light up.
I'll be honest with you, my parents would love this stuff.
Yeah,
they would love it because the Harmony with the Alexa and the Harmony interface was. They tried it when it was real new, and you had to say, "Alexa, tell my
Harmony to blah blah blah,"
whatever, and it was like she was never going to understand all that. Let's be reasonable. So, anyways, all right, let's go on. Comments. Rob W bought his SVS PC 2000 subwoofer to pair it with the PB12 NSD he already had. His room is about 4,300 cubic feet. He wanted to share his results. He's done the subwoofer crawl when he had only his PB12 NSD. It ended up sort of in the middle of a wall, which looked a little strange aesthetically, but he got very good results at his primary listening position. With 2 subs now, he put them in diagonally opposite corners. He reran Odyssey and measured the response with Room EQ Wizard. He saw much better uniformity across his seats. His primary seat didn't see any huge change, which was kind of what he expected. So everything went as predicted. And that felt a bit anticlimactic. No big surprises, but the room looks better now, and every seat is a good seat. And he's a little bit surprised that Odyssey initially had him turn down the volume dials on the 2 subwoofers to about a quarter to 3. It might need more output than the 2000 series can offer, but they seem more than up to the task. Dude, you corner loaded them, so
you kind of factor them, and they are rated for a large room, which 4,300 cubic feet is squarely in the large room category. So it all added up, as it should.
Yeah, and you know what? We're gonna get to this later too, because somebody's gonna be asking us about subwoofer upgrade, this is one of those things where you're like, this dude did everything to maximize his one subwoofer experience. So when he adds the second sub, he's like, well, from where I'm sitting, it's not that big of a deal. But everybody else around you is like, holy crap, this is amazing. That's not blowing. I can hear the bass, or it's not blowing me out of my seat because he's more uniform bass response across all the seats. So if you had not done that, if you had just shoved it in the corner, like a lot of people do, and they buy a second one and they shove it in the opposite corner because we tell them to, they're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Right. Yeah, the folks who never did a subwoofer crawl with their lone sub to begin with, right?
Yeah, or they did, and their room was a lot worse than yours, which maybe that's the case. So this is sort of like the best worst case scenario,
right? Yeah. Or maybe they did a subwoofer crawl, but they weren't willing to put it in the kind of awkward looking place in the middle of the wall, which is actually the best spot, and you were willing to. So yeah, there's lots of scenarios where having added the second sub might have made a very audible difference in your primary seat. In your case, since you had set it up quite optimally for one seat, one sub, not the big difference. But that's okay. I mean, that's as he says, it was predicted. He was maybe hoping he'd be surprised by some huge change that wasn't predicted. But no, everything went according to plan.
Yeah. Sorry. It's like I don't think it's that big of a deal. I know. I will say, okay, so I did the stereo thing with the Xbox.
Okay.
And I'm using the surround up mixing, whatever. And at the very least, now all my speakers are playing, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, with sounds coming out of the correct channels.
It's kind of nice to have all the speakers playing, and there are definitely times when the overheads are being used in a way that I can hear them. That being, it's still so irksome that this is the solution. We are back to 1970s like stereo. Is what we have to use with that. I think that's essentially a supercomputer in a box. Right, like when stereo was first, this thing they weren't even computers. This thing right here, this thing would have taken up like like the entire NSA.
That's right.
The computer. I mean, it just floor to ceiling, transistors. It would have glowed so hot you could see it from space. But we can't do surround sound. What are you, crazy?
Not correctly. You can manually change it until you get what you need.
We're way too busy streaming 1080p and a bajillion pixels or whatever, polygons. And shut up. All right, so what is this, Rob? You forgot to mention this, or what is this?
It was something I wanted to mention when we were talking about drop tile ceilings and using them in an actual sound isolation, soundproofing scenario. Right. So explain that last week. I had meant to say that one of the things you can do is put mass-loaded vinyl, a layer of mass-loaded vinyl, which can be rolled up, put up into that up above the track system, the T-bar system, and to have it like laid out correctly, you probably will need to cut slits in it to go around the support parts that are actually suspending that T-bar system, but then you tuck tape them back together, and that gives you essentially one continuous layer above the actual ceiling tiles that you would see from the bottom. And that gives you a very continuous layer that blocks air movement, going through the flanking paths. So forgot to mention it, just wanted to mention it now in case anyone's thinking of trying to do a soundproof system with a drop tile ceiling. Mass-loaded vinyl.
Mass-loaded vinyl, yes. That's the next update from Mass Effect. Mass-loaded vinyl. It's going to be a 2-channel stereo experiment with
there you go.
Skrillex is going to be doing the soundtrack on that one. It's just on vinyl. It's just the needle's going to keep jumping out of the thing. Don't worry about it. Kevin, on to the questions. Kevin says, first up, he has to drive to New York 4 times per month for work. You work 4 days a month? That's awesome.
The drive is 4 times per month. We don't know how many days he's there.
I think he's probably driving there every Monday or Sunday night or something like that. It's a 7.5-hour drive in his case. So when you heard about Rob's drive to pick up the TV in Phoenix, he thought, it's not so bad. Yeah, I do that anyways. I could pick up a TV while I'm in New York if I wanted to. All right. So Kevin says in there, after 15 years in their last house, him and his family of 7. So when you say family of 7, I mean, that counts you, right? So his
2 parents, 5 kids.
5 kids, right? They have moved into a new house. He had outfitted in his old house nearly every room with Sonos equipment, and there was music playing somewhere in the house nearly 24/7, mostly gangster rap. But the new it was mumble rap, let's be honest. But the new house is open concept. I don't know what mumble rap is, but Samuel L. Jackson doesn't like it very much. The family room is open to the kitchen and a sunroom, plus it's a loft design, so the ceilings are very high. It's all open to the second floor, and there are large windows, hard floors, all this stuff. Right?
Yeah. Nightmare acoustically.
Yeah. So, it's like glass floor to ceiling. With all of that, the largest Sonos Play 5 speakers sound a bit thin, shall we say. And he has some bookshelf speakers, Yamo, and a Sonos Connect amp, but those can't handle this huge space either. So he visited the World of Macintosh showroom in New York. It's a wide open space, but they managed to fill the whole space. Of course they did. They have 700,000 tweeters in one speaker. Floor to ceiling tweeters. That's not me lying either. I don't know that they have it there, but they definitely make those speakers. So he knows it's possible to fill his space. He'd just rather not have to spend $400,000 like the Macintosh 2-channel setup the setup was going for. I thought he was going to go for it. I'm like, you got $400,000 to spend. No. I can fill that space, Haas. All right. Kevin says his wife is very reasonable. She's even fine with having some large speakers and a pair of SVS cylinder subs, but she sort of drew the line at the gigantic metal monoblock amplifiers on blocks of wood in the middle of the room with garden hose wires all over the place. Well, good.
Yep.
I drew the line there too.
Any of that junk.
So it definitely doesn't need to be invisible, but it can't be utterly insane. So the avant-garde speakers, you know the ones I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah, those enormous horns.
Those big old horns. Dude, they would totally fill this space, though.
It was like 30-inch wide horns.
Both physically and with sound. I mean, these speakers are immense. So a Sonos Connect could allow him to hook up basically any amplifier and speakers. So what can we suggest for this huge volume of air? So first of all, I am a little bit on the confused side. So is he looking for a whole home audio, or is he looking for a setup, a home theater setup in this big old room of his?
So he's looking for something that will connect to his Sonos system, because he's still going to be using Sonos throughout the house.
So he's looking for a whole, whole house audio. Basically.
Yeah, whole house audio solution, but specifically for this family room that happens to be open to like everything. So he's like, I want to be able to put something that connects to Sonos in the family room and be able to use it in the family room, but what can I use in there that's not going to get gobbled up by this immense amount of space?
Right. You need some very, very, very efficient speakers. Yes. Is what you need. They don't necessarily have to be Macintosh $400,000,
definitely not
7,000 tweeters. But just something really efficient. So you're looking for something horn-loaded. So if you were buying from a showroom floor, you would be looking at Klipsch. And you don't necessarily, people are going to be mad, but you don't necessarily need floor-standing speakers just because you have a big old room. It can help.
Don't have to. It's probably easier actually to place them.
Yeah. So, because the room, I don't remember. Did he give us the actual?
No, unknown how many cubic feet. I mean, it's huge. It's a huge volume.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, like, you could have, like, just basically not corner load, but you'd have 4 speakers, 2 speakers for each channel. One on one side of the room and the other 2 on the other side of the room. But maybe I'm just saying this. It's not, don't take it literally, but corner. In each corner basically, where the side, one side of the room would be the right channel, the other side of the room would be the left channel.
Or you could have like, or you could have 2 separate Sonos setups. I've got a Sonos setup, a Sonos pair that handles this side of the family room, and a Sonos pair that handles the other side of the family room, and you can turn them both on, or you can turn just one or the other on.
Yeah, so you're looking for something horn-loaded. Klipsch would be good. What are those stupid? Somebody's going to be mad if I say stupid. What are those ones with like the 4 tweeters in them? Those are supposed to be super efficient, right? Yeah.
There's Tecton.
Those are kind of expensive. I don't like that one either, but
I'm not a fan there. No, I like so the Reference Premiere series recently got an update. So the original Reference Premiere series is available at some very nice prices. I'm showing an image of the RP260s, which are one-step
Klipsch.
Yeah, these are Klipsch. Yeah, and these are one step down from the most expensive in the Reference Premiere series, but the big ones are really big and kind of ugly. So these ones have the 6.5-inch drivers in them that you can get them on Amazon right now for $800 a pair, which is pretty darn reasonable. Now they're 97 dB efficient. So 1 watt give you 97 decibels of output. You kind of can't beat that for the price. And I was even thinking, so he says he has a Sonos Connect amp. That's the original one that they did, the $500 one. I think that's only 45 or 50 watts per channel or something like that, which is still, I mean, when you got 97 dB efficient speakers, still not bad. But you could actually kind of max out these Reference Premiere speakers with the new Sonos amp. This is their $600 one that they just released, but it's 125 watts per channel.
Oh, there you go. That would be more than enough.
I mean, that's to me that it's a nice small little unit, nothing even close to the gigantic monoblock amps that were being shown in the Macintosh place. This is a little Sonos amp, but it's 125 watts per channel. You hook those up to a pair of clip speakers. Now, you said you were okay with getting a nice big cylinder sub. In a space like this, I'm not even sure I would go for duals, because where would you even put them? And you're not super worried about the uniformity of the bass thing. But I mean, like, maybe one PC 4000 would be a very good choice in here.
Well, I mean, I just assume that there's going to be hallways and everything's going to be open to everything. So there's not going to be any way to get a like really uniform bass response.
No.
But
and this is for almost, I mean, not definitely background, but essentially background music a lot of the time, you know, stuff playing. And like I say, you could get 2 of these setups and it's still not like that bad of a price.
Right.
You know, you get a couple of PC 4000s, 2 pairs of the clip speakers. I mean, one alternative I was thinking was the HSU, the Shure speakers. They have their HC1 Mark II, which is a nice horn-loaded design, but it's not quite as efficient as the Klipsch's.
Right.
And those are about $500 a pair for those.
I'm just, with the room this big, I have a real hard time recommending only a single sub. Somebody's going to be too close to it, and somebody's going to be too far away.
Sure,
you know what I mean.
That,
I almost want to say,
if you do the 2 setups, you could actually share the inputs, because they have 2 inputs on each sub. So you could have 2 Sonos setups and actually feed each individual Sonos amp to both subwoofers, and they'll get shared.
Yeah,
that'll still work. And you could do like a wireless subwoofer system, so that you don't have wires going all over the place. That's easy enough to do. Use the Outlaw one that I like.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
So as far as acoustics go, he's doing what he can in terms of heavy drapes for the many large windows and rugs to cover at least some of the hard surfaces, but he isn't sure what he can do in terms of decorative panels on the wall. Do we have any additional suggestions for tackling the acoustics in this space? Yeah, man, you need those printed panels. And we've got the Rob Stub with. I feel like there's more than one Rob W now. That
I don't know. I think it's the same Rob W.
The same Rob. Okay. Anyway, so Rob W. did the movie poster panels. That's a DIY design. But nowadays you can get them made for you from like whoever that is. Who does it?
Well, as far as printing goes, GIK and Acoustimac both do printing, but they won't print copyright movie panels. They have a large selection of stock photos and stuff. Some of the images are really nice. And
well, this is a family room. You don't think you're gonna want a bunch of movie posters around there, anyways.
I would just family photos. If it's family,
get family.
Family photos. You own the rights to those. They'll print those, no problem.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would do family photos, or
and you can
free
even have
images.
them printed so that the panel itself looks like it has a frame. But that's actually a printed frame on the panel itself, but it still looks like a picture frame.
That sounds weird. Okay, I
think that's the way to come at this. I mean, what
yeah,
else?
I do too.
I mean, I guess the other thing you do is just make sure everything that you furnish this place with is plush and absorptive, if possible.
Yeah.
That'll help to some degree. Every end table has like insulation stuffed underneath it and fabric draped over it to hide the insulation.
Yeah, that's probably going to happen.
I know, right?
Ted. So Legacy Audio has their own room correction system, which was news to me. They call it the Wavelet, and they talk a lot about making corrections in the time domain. They've dubbed it stereo unmasking technology.
Gotta unmask that stereo, you know? It's being concealed. Your stereo is being concealed by your room.
Yes.
Yeah.
They say it can
sound is being altered.
They say it can compensate for the early reflections created by a small acoustic space without just attenuating certain frequencies like a typical EQ system.
Okay.
Cost about $5,000. Of course it does. And it's only for 2-channel stereo because
well, of course it is.
Why would it not be? So Ted isn't jumping on it without consideration first. You shouldn't even be considering it, but let's just go on. But if it's really capable of making him believe that he's at a concert venue instead of his small room, he thinks it would be worth the money. He also has Odyssey Multi-Q XT32. So how much different with the wavelet? How much different is the wavelet from that?
Well, the Wavelet can't do multi-channel, and your Odyssey X232 can, so there's that.
There's that. So I didn't exactly watch the video, but
it's useless.
I did.
The video is of no use.
I did listen to the video. So what they're talking about, I mean, and it's stuff we talk about on this podcast a lot, is room reflections. That's what time domain garbage is. It's just the sound is bouncing around the room, and it's coming back to your ears in a time later than it's expected, and it makes everything sound weird. And that's what room,
or they're actually claiming earlier than expected, because if you were in a large space, there'd be a greater delay between the direct sound versus the reflected sound, and they're saying in a small room those reflections are arriving early enough that they're smearing together with the direct sound, which that is something we have described.
That's kind of dumb. But
not so many words. They're talking about fur filters, Ted.
I know.
That's what they're using, which is magic in 2-channel stereo land, but it's kind of been around a while in the home theater world.
Well, Odyssey was the first one that used fur filters. So, the first one I know of that put fur filters into their room correction system. And that's why we like it so much.
Yeah.
So, I guess the Legacy guys are doing the same thing. Is it 2EQ? Did they basically buy up all the old 2EQ things?
Yeah,
I think that's what they did. I would bet that they did.
Maybe the argument could be made for you, Ted, to try Dirac. But even that, I mean, you've got Ted, we know, has an AV receiver that lets him use the Odyssey editor app if he wants to manually adjust the target curve, or say don't correct above a certain frequency. I mean, most of the manual control that you can do in Dirac, you can now do not quite as granular, granted, not as granular in the Odyssey app. But you can still do a fair amount of manual changes to Odyssey's target curve now, thanks to that Odyssey editor app. There is no way you should pay $5,000 for this, Ted. I don't know. There's no argument for it. They're not doing anything magical. They're not doing anything that Dirac can't do. So you could get
they're not being very honest either. I mean, obviously.
No, I mean, they're talking to the 2-channel crowd who's like, their notion of EQ is the old graphic equalizer. With the individual sliders, the vertical sliders that you would manually move up and down. To them, that is the last time there was an innovation in EQ. They haven't heard about any of this other stuff, and they're like, we just invented it. We just invented fur filters. That's essentially what they're claiming here. There's no magic to this, Ted. They're not doing anything different than, I mean, I would easily take Dirac over this. If you're like, I have to add something externally, then you go to Mini DSP and you get one of their stereo Dirac units, which is 1/10 of the price.
Well, I mean, one of the things that bothers me about this whole thing is that they are claiming they can do something that, fur filters are good, but they are not. It's not like you're going to put them in your system and then boom, you have to do nothing else. And that's what they're claiming.
Yeah,
they're claiming that
you can't change the direct sound. The direct sound still needs to be the direct sound.
Right. So it can do stuff that makes things better. But we've said on this podcast many times before, Odyssey, room correction, all that stuff, Dirac, it's all the cherry on top. You have to fix the room first. So if you're not fixing the room, and these people who they are selling this $5,000 box to are not fixing the room, they'll put a little tiny clock in there, or they'll put some weird totem spike thingies in there.
Or they've actively been told that they shouldn't put anything at their reflection points. Like that, this is quote unquote advice that you will see given in the 2-channel world. Like, no, don't change your room. That steals the reflections that ought to be there, except changed by this $5,000 thing. It's anachronistic, but I believe that's the way the world goes in the 2-channel stereo world.
So it's just like last week we were talking about super tweeters. Whenever a product comes out, then I'm like, that's garbage. And it's not so much that the product itself is garbage. It might be very, very good.
Yeah, it could do a perfally decent job. It's just the price tag they're asking.
The price tag and the marketing behind it, the things that they're saying, I'm like, man, dude, that just feels so dishonest, and it feels so, super tweeter. Shut up. So it makes me not like the company as much. Now their speakers be perfectly fine.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've heard very good things about them. You love them, and lots of people have heard them, have loved them, and I'm sure they're very, very good. But it definitely takes the company down a step in my opinion.
It's a bit like the way Axiom went, right? We liked their speakers; they were a great value, and then they started going insane.
Yeah, they went a little bit crazy. Yeah. Drink a Kool-Aid. Bradford says he might not be the typical AV Rant listener. He doesn't want a dark gray room with Atmos as I sit in my orange room. He's got a 5.1 setup in his family room, and when the game is on, he wants the same sound playing in stereo in almost every room in the house and outside. So, what he wants is basically a sports bar in his home, including sound out on the patio. Okay. So he wants 5.1 in this family room, and then he wants stereo like everywhere else.
Yeah.
His receiver is in the family room. It's a Sony DH770. It's got 7 channels, but no pre-outs and no zone 2. But since he's only powering 5.1 setup, the remaining 2 amp channels can be assigned as front B speakers. So he's thinking that's a way to get the same sound output as stereo. But then he was thinking he'd send that stereo to all the other rooms via Bluetooth, but he'd need a speaker wire to RCA adapter and then a Bluetooth transmitter. With all that in mind, is there a better solution? Dude, you need to straight up upgrade your receiver. That's what you need to do.
That is certainly, certainly one way to come at it. Yeah, without question.
So, I mean, because right now that we have Yamaha with their, what is it called? MusicCast?
MusicCast.
And then we have Denon with the Hios, which are all solutions that are basically giving you what you want.
Yeah, I would definitely, out of those, if you're willing to spend the money to do this, I would go with the MusicCast system, because MusicCast remains the only one of these built-in whole house wireless audio solutions from one of the major receiver manufacturers that lets you continue to play surround sound in the main room that is using that AV receiver, while down converting that same signal to stereo for all the other wireless rooms that it's sending the signal to. MusicCast is the only one that does it. Hios, what's the one? The Flare Connect that Onkyo does. If you're playing stereo in any of the other rooms, they will also only play stereo in the main room. They won't let you continue to play 5.1 or 7.1 in the main room, but MusicCast will. The issue is he forwarded like a couple of the devices. Now, first of all, I would never attempt to use Bluetooth to send wireless music throughout my entire house. He was looking at
it's not going to make it.
Yeah, he was looking at a Bluetooth transmitter that claims to have a range of up to 160 feet, but I'm like, yeah, that's with like in a hall of mirrors.
Yeah,
you know, where the signal is. Hey, there's no way it's getting through walls.
There's almost a direct line of sight between my speaker and my Echo Dot, and it's across the house from each other, but it's almost across the living room, the big open concept room. So it's probably 20 feet away. Mm-hmm. You turn the microwave on, that's it. You lost it.
Yeah,
you lost it for sure.
Yeah,
and God help you if you go into the bathroom, because the bathroom is part of a new addition. So the wall between the bathroom and that room is actually cinder blocks. Mm-hmm. It's dead. It's not going through that at all.
So my number one choice would be that you get a Yamaha receiver, and it doesn't have to be a top-end one. Their entry-level ones support MusicCast now. So you can get one that's just a 5.1 receiver that has MusicCast. But the issue is that the products he was looking at were quite inexpensive. This was like a $50 or $60 Bluetooth transmitter, some like $30 or $40 Bluetooth receivers. He's looking in that type of price range. And there's nothing in MusicCast that's that type of price range, right? Like in the other rooms, you'd either have to have a MusicCast wireless speaker, which are in the $300 to $400 range, or one of the MusicCast amplifiers that would let you power any speakers you like, and that is also in the like $250 to $350 range. These are much more expensive than the types of products he was looking at. So I wanted to offer something that might work for you without even having to replace your existing receiver. Now, it's a little bit questionable, because if you use the 6th and 7th binding posts that are here and assign them as front B, they are only going to be replicating what is coming out of your front A channels, which if you're running your family room in 5.1 means no center channel.
That means no voices.
It's only going to be doing what's happening in your front left and right speakers.
Right.
Now, of course, you can just say, hey, in the main room, when I'm using other rooms and I want the sports bar atmosphere, I do it in stereo. And now you're fine. So
Right.
if you're okay with that, if you're okay with every room, including the family room, playing stereo, you could do this, and you could do exactly what you said. You turn on your front B speakers, and what you could do is connect those with speaker wire to an Amphony wireless transmitter. The Amphony wireless transmitters I like because they have speaker wire inputs. So you can just connect a stereo speaker wire signal to the Amphony transmitter. And the Amphony transmitter, I'm talking about the Model 1700 here, because that one makes sense. Each receiver unit in the Model 1700 series is a stereo amplifier. So you can then connect them to any speakers you like, any normal pair of speakers, and it'll power them just fine. The Model 1700, you can have one transmitter and 4 of the stereo receivers all
that's good.
at the same time.
That should be enough. Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough. If you only have 4 additional rooms, because your family room is still being powered by your Sony, and if you have 4 additional rooms, including the patio outside, then the Model 1700 would work. Now, it's $100 for the first transmitter and receiver pair, and then I believe it's $65 or $70 for each additional receiver. But that's not too bad. That's in the same ballpark as what you were looking at before. And those use a radio frequency signal that really can go like 300 feet. It's not Bluetooth.
Right.
And to me, that's the cost-effective solution if the Yamaha Music Cast is too expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think yes. Yes. Let us know what you do.
Yeah,
I'd be curious
about that.
I'd be
but
curious.
Definitely look at the Model 1700 Amphonies. Yeah, there you go.
Matt wants new earphones. He has a pair of Bose IE2. I don't know what those are. Yeah, he finds them very comfortable and loves the way they fit, but he isn't entirely happy with their sound quality. He says he has a physical disability that makes it difficult for him to put on traditional over-the-ear headphones with a headphone band on top of your head. So, what? So he prefers earphones, but he also gave some in-ear monitors a try, and he hated the feeling of ear tips going that far into his ear canal. So that's how he ended up with the Bose IE2 that seal better than earbuds, but go a little ways into the ear canal, which is not a very common design. He's using Amazon gift cards, so these have to be available from Amazon. He does not need active noise canceling. He'd enjoy them being wireless, but it's not a requirement. If they are wired, they need to be efficient enough to be driven by just a typical phone or a normal player. He doesn't want to have to use a separate headphone amp. He wants more neutral sound and better bass. So do we have any recommendations that meet all of this criteria? All right, so I have reviewed a couple of headphones that are like this, and one of them came from Phaeton. Now, I went to Phaeton... Okay. To see if they still had something like that. The only thing I saw was the MS300 BA. I don't know what the BA stands for, but they call it a partially in-ear model.
Okay.
So it sort of sits both in and out of your ear, which is kind of what I'd heard before from them. It's sort of a hybrid design. So they might be worth giving a chance. And the other types of headphones that I have tried that are like this, I cannot remember the brand. I think they were Sennheisers, but basically they had a band. They were wireless, and they're for runners. So a lot of times, I think what you need to be looking for is a headphone that is designed with runners in mind, because there's 2 types of headphones for runners. Well, there's actually 3. There's the over-the-ear headphones for people who don't actually run and are apparently trying to do it with these big old headphones on because it looks real ridiculous. But then there's the in-ear ones that are really made to stay, and they fit real tight and they don't fall out and everything. And then there's the ones that are designed to allow you to hear the music, but are also allowed to allow outside sounds to come in at the same time, so that you can hear traffic around you. Those designs usually involve some sort of hybrid earphone type design, where there's that if you're in a quiet space, they're going to sound just fine. The outside in the real world, they're going to allow outside sound, and they don't fit so tight as these other ones. So Phaeton is a manufacturer that has made stuff like that before.
Okay. Now for me, I didn't have one off the top of my head, so I went over to the wire cutter, because nobody has listened to more earphones and headphones than Lauren Dragon, who writes for the wire cutter. That woman has listened to thousands of headphones and earphones, so I trust her picks largely. Now I was a little bit surprised but she had a pick for what she considers to be the most comfortable and neutral sounding of sort of earbud / in-ear, but not the full in-ear monitors, because they have a whole separate section for specifically in-ear monitors, and their pick were from Bang & Olufsen, which normally I would expect Bang & Olufsen to have kind of their own sound, but apparently they made some darn good headphones. So specifically the ones that they recommend are the Beoplay H3s, and they stress about the comfort. Now they have what looks like a fairly standard in-ear monitor tip going on as far as the images go, but supposedly they're really, really comfortable. I can only take other people's word for it because I haven't tried them, but as they always do on the Wirecutter, they have a fairly large panel of people with different head sizes and ear shapes and all that, and everyone's like, yeah, these are really comfortable to wear. So it's a good recommendation in my book. RBH was also highly recommended over there. Specifically, they recommended their is it EP? Yeah, EP2s. So they have a whole bunch of got EP1s, 2, 3s, but they like the EP2s. But if you look at the EP2s, these definitely look like that's the wrong image, but these definitely look like in-ear monitors, right? That's a fairly long stock and the regular in-ear monitor tip. But RBH does have a Bluetooth version, the EPSB. I'm not sure what that stands for, but EPSB is their wireless version, their Bluetooth version of it. But again, they do look like pretty traditional in-ear monitors to me. So those are some options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know what you got.
I like the looks of those Bang & Olufsens, but those Bang & Olufsens are, what are they, like $250, something like that? No, $150. That's not so bad.
That's not so bad.
$150. That's
Bang & Olufsen. Yeah, that's not so bad.
That's in the realm of reasonability. $150. He was saying he's willing to spend up to $300, so we're certainly not hitting that.
Yeah. Jonathan, Mark Waldrop, who runs AIX, I think is how you say
AIX.
it. AIX Records.
It's just an initialism.
Yeah. iTracks and Real HD Audio made a blog post about the preliminary results of his HD Audio Challenge. Mark has long been an advocate for high-resolution audio, but he has always maintained that it's really only beneficial if the entire production chain from initial recording all the way through to the final release remains at higher than CD quality. I've got some of his recordings here. It's mostly folksy types of music that I can't stand. But, if I want to listen to something that's, I know that the recording is, got my hair cut today and I'm itching like crazy. It is driving me nuts. But if I want to listen to some stuff that I know is well recorded, I can listen to that. The problem is I don't listen to it enough to have a good familiarity with it, to be able to A/B speakers with it, but I have it available. And if you ever come to my house and you want one, I will give it to you because I just collect dust. He's been critical of many of the other high-res audio download sites that sell tracks that are merely upsampled from CD quality masters. But the HD Audio Challenge, which includes 6 pairs of audio tracks for comparison, exclusively used tracks from his label AIX Records that were recorded at 96 kilobits, 98 kilohertz, 24-bit, and remained higher than CD quality all the way through the production to the final release. Amazingly, he admits that the preliminary results indicate that most people were 50-50 when it came to identifying which version of the track was 9624 versus the 44.116, which 44.116 is CD quality.
That's right.
9624 is higher than the CD quality.
Yes.
And what we've always said on this podcast is that 44.116 is what you can hear anyways. So anything more than that,
of human hearing.
Anything more of that is stuff you can't hear, so you're not going to be able to hear the difference. But whatever. Some people got them all correct, but that could have honestly just been luck. And a large number of people said they couldn't tell the two versions apart, including Mark himself.
Yeah.
So Jonathan would like to hear a response. Can we believe Mark is actually willing to say that he can't hear a difference between CD quality and high-res audio in a blind comparison? Yeah, I can't believe. I mean, I'm surprised he said it.
But I applaud him for it.
I applaud him for it. Yeah. Hey, welcome to this side of the tracks, buddy. Welcome to you swam ashore to Rationality Island. We've been camped out here for a long time. There's only a couple of us. We're trying. Welcome aboard. Yeah. So yeah, I'm surprised he said it. I'm proud. I am encouraged because 50-50 is what you expect. Because
well, sure, that's a coin flip. So
it's a coin flip. Yeah. And with a large enough sample size of people, yes, some people are getting them all right, and some people are getting them all wrong. But that's just by chance. About 1 in every 100 should get that. If it's a 50-50 coin toss. So I think it's great. I think that's now. I still feel like, and I hope that I'm sure Mark's gonna be listening to this tomorrow when the podcast comes out, or maybe he's watching right now. I hope that it's not a discouraging result for him, because for me, paying attention to the quality of the audio recording for whatever reason is extremely important. And saying, okay, well, people can't hear the difference anyways, I'm not going to pay as much attention to the quality of the recording, I feel like is a disservice to the listener.
This goes back to what I've been harping on every time this topic comes up, which is that it's a huge case of misattribution.
Yeah.
Because it is unquestionable that many of the recordings you would get from AIX Records or iTracks, which you will download in the full 96 kilohertz 24-bit quality, it is unquestionable that they have better sound quality than almost all the commercial CDs that you could buy.
Yeah. It's very, I'm
not debating that.
No. Yes.
It's unquestionable that they have greater dynamic range, especially than almost every commercially released CD these days. But is that because it's 9624, or is it because of the way it was mastered?
Yeah.
Or, and I will go right, I am in full agreement with Mark that it completely makes sense in the initial recording to record with greater headroom. You don't want to record at your
44.1,
yeah, at your final, like if you were going out and recording something, you don't want to record at like exactly what you're going to end up with no headroom, no wiggle room whatsoever. You can't make any changes to this thing. As soon as you do, you're adding distortion. It's like, no, record with the added headroom. Then you don't have to have an active filter, like a super steep active low-pass filter on the top end of the signal while you're recording, which we know can add distortion to the signal. You don't have to do that. You still have to have a filter, but it doesn't have to be nearly as steep and aggressive. It gives you the headroom to make some changes. You can add noise to your recording and then dither that noise out of the signal before you finalize it. Like, it completely makes sense to record with greater precision, with to higher frequencies than you can hear, and with a wider dynamic range than you can hear. Record it initially, absolutely. Just like you might want to video record a movie in like 16K resolution if you could, because then you can make all kinds of changes and still end up with HD or 4K as the end result. So it's misattributing the final thing. In the final thing, we know that you've recorded it, you've made all the changes you want to make, and then you finalize it at 44.116, which is capable of containing everything that the human ear can hear. Yeah. You've made all the changes before. You've gotten rid of all the noise already. Now that final result can be shrunk down to that sampling rate and bit rate.
And if this feels like a little heady, what we're talking about here, think about that from the aspect of a JPEG or an image. Sure. If you find an image online that's the perfect size for what you want, right? And say what you want is a postcard size. Okay. So you find a postcard size image of the thing you want. You're like, this is perfect. You print it. It looks perfect. And then somebody says, you know what? I'd love to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You're like, great. Blow it up. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. You get the image big, and then when you want to shrink it down to 44.1, it's still awesome.
Yes,
you know, the file. You know, when you're shrinking that down, when you're cutting it down, you don't lose anything. Yeah. You know, lose anything. But that's because you had it at great resolution when it was large as well. So,
but you know what? I will still agree. If you made the recording at a higher sampling rate, higher bit rate, you did all the mastering at higher, and then you're like, and my final result is still 9624, and I'm just going to release that to the public. I'm like, that's fine.
That's fine.
I am totally okay with that.
Won't be able to play it on my CD player, but whatever.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can play it on almost anything else, and I'm like, that's still great. You don't I'm not saying you must shrink it down to 44.116. It's the argument that if you do, you are necessarily losing quality. And it's that very last thing that we're saying, no, that's not true. You can still contain everything the human ear can hear in that signal, but you have to do everything before that point correctly first, and that's what gets lost.
I am titling this one a message to Mark. I'm doing it right now. You're a message to Mark. How do you spell his last name? Wall.
WALDREP. Just so he finds it.
I want him to find it. It's a love letter to. It's a love letter. That's what I'm going to title it. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. Sometimes I do this. I don't really ever do this in the. Okay. Where are we at? Okay.
We're on number 6, and we're up to Iris.
Iris enjoyed our discussion about phase and time domain when it comes to speakers, and she says Tom was spot on that the guy saying her speakers have time domain issues is just a meanie and a butt face. I will just go. I'll go right there. He's a butt face. I said it. I'll stand by it.
Doo-doo head.
I do. It's right. And he's got the cooties. I heard.
Yep.
Iris has been using her setup almost entirely for 2-channel stereo music listening for a while now, but she decided she'd like to get back into movies in a big way. Music is still very important, though, so the setup needs to be able to pull double duty. The room is small, 9.5 feet wide by 13.5 feet long, and there's a radiator underneath the window on the left, but otherwise it's a perfect rectangle that is entirely dedicated to being a listening room / theater. She says she already has a ton of acoustic panels, but she hasn't installed them yet in her room. But if we say to install them, she's got them on the hand. All right, so we got a picture of this room. She's got larger bookshelf speakers on stands. That thing to the left there of her little stand, is that an HPPC or is that one of those weirdo power conditioner things?
Oh, yeah. I'm betting that's a power conditioner.
I think that's what it is. She's got what looks to be like a Krell amp at the bottom there.
It's a Pass Labs. We know
Pass Labs. It's a Pass Labs. Pass Labs. Yeah. So she's got some high-end 2-channel stuff. She's got 2 panels on the right wall. It looks like a circular panel, bass trap that goes floor to ceiling.
Could be,
in the back right corner. And then there's a window on the left wall, and it looks like, I guess that's the radiator. Is that the radiator?
Yep, I think it's the radiator underneath the window there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of stuffed animals, and there's a carpet, and that's it. Looks good. So being that Iris has been focused strictly on 2-channel music listening, she's got it in mind that she wants a pair of full-range front, left, right speakers. She auditioned a pair of JBL Synthesis 43767 whatever speakers that are $15,000 a pair. That borrow a lot from the JBL M2, which are $20,000 a pair, flagship studio monitor design. She loved them. And she for $15,000.
I would hope for that price. Yes.
Better. Everyone should love them. So everybody's going to buy them. She loved them and says that in the small demo room, they delivered big bass and worked really well. She's this close to ordering a demo pair that doesn't cost quite as much. It would have to really. I was telling my kids this the other day. They're like, "Daddy, this thing's on sale for $500." I'm like, "If it's on sale, I mean, it's $500 off." I'm like, "If it's $500 off, I can't afford it."
Yeah, if the demo pair is even half price, you're still talking $7,500 for these pair of speakers. Yeah.
So, what do you think about having those as a foundation of a new system? I do not like it. I'm sorry.
15-inch woofers and a very high efficiency compression.
That's that horn one, right? That looks like an old piece of equipment from forever ago. Yeah. Especially in a room this small.
Yeah, this is a 15-inch driver in there and a huge horn, and that's a compression tweeter in there. It's actually a dual diaphragm compression tweeter that they're using in that thing. This, if you want to say the word overkill for this size of room, that is the understatement of the century.
You get the avant-garde ones in there. That'd be a real overkill.
Not only that, but of course we are going to talk about subwoofers.
Yes, we are. Yeah. We are. But let's not go there yet. So, because we're going to answer her questions.
Yes.
So, they delivered big bass and they worked really well. I'm sure they did. This room is far too small for these speakers.
Oh yeah,
far too small. I think if you slammed them in the walls, it would still be the tweeters are so far in, the center of the tweeter, I don't even know you would get really good stereo imaging off of these things in this room. Not only that, you could literally power them with an amplifier the size of a quarter. You would never
Right.
put a whole watt into these things.
Never. Not at your listening distance in this room. And the bass, while I have no question it could fully pressurize this room, because these are an example of a speaker with their 15-inch drivers that can genuinely play down to 20 hertz. They really honestly can. I have no question they have enough output to pressurize a 9.5 by 13.5 foot room. That is not the issue. The issue is that you still must place them at the front of your room where they are ideal for stereo imaging. And even though I'm betting you really, really only have one seat that you care about, there's no guarantee you're getting linear bass at that one seat.
With those two,
with them positioned that way.
In that position, yeah.
Now, let's remember that. Here's the awesome news.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking she was going to spend at least $7,500 on these. I can't imagine even
What's
the demo.
What's wrong with the speaker she's got right now?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
Maybe she's thinking there's nothing she can match to them to make a full surround sound system.
Okay, now if that's the case, we can talk about it. But
sure,
honestly, if you like the speakers you have now, why aren't you just adding to them? I'm like, if this is your 2-channel listening room, you're like, it has to pull double duty. Well, then, dude, why not? Or do that? Why aren't you just adding to what you got? Because if these are at all linear speakers, like I don't know what she's got. It doesn't say here. So
she did mention in her email there. I'm sorry, they weren't a speaker that I recognized by name. So
yeah, I think I maybe saw that email too. But
sure.
Anyways, if they are a speaker that's all linear, we can find you speakers that match well enough to flesh out a surround sound system.
She was kind of talking about wanting an upgrade though, so
and that's fine. That's okay. That's okay. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But don't discount the speakers that you currently love, if you do love them, because you could just be falling in love with them again. For just now for surround sound today.
But I'm thinking the great news here is that let's go nuts. Let's say they're even 2/3 off, and they were $5,000. She could have got these things for $5,000 a pair.
Okay.
Let's assume that's the budget just for what would have been just a front, left, right pair of speakers. But I'm also going to include subwoofers in there now. Now JBL Synthesis has some really nice speakers, and the M2s that these are based on are fantastic speakers, but they have a considerably smaller version that still borrows a lot of the technology. It still borrows that horn wave guide. It still has a compression tweeter design, although only a single diaphragm, because that's really all you need, and an 8-inch woofer instead of a 15-inch woofer. All of which
sounds a lot more reasonable already.
A lot more reasonable. Those are part of the JBL Synthesis, the exact same series. These are the 4306s instead of the 4367s. These are a bookshelf speaker with an 8-inch woofer and the same waveguide and a compression tweeter. Now, they go for $1,500 a pair, which is still a lot of money for a bookshelf pair of speakers. But if you love that JBL Synthesis sound, and I don't blame you for loving that,
yeah,
$1,500 a pair, that still leaves you at least $3,500 in what you were going to spend. And I imagine it was probably going to be more, but that leaves you at least $3,500 to get subwoofers. Now, I'm thinking you could get 4 small sealed subwoofers and put one in each corner of this room, and you wanted a killer system for music and movies? Another more killer than that. And you can
but we haven't talked about the rest of the speakers, though. I mean, she's got to get everything else as well.
No, but this budget that she had for these 4367s,
I see what you're saying.
That was its own separate budget. Everything else had to fit into another budget, but just this front pair is because she's like, I want the 2-channel music to be like super duper good.
Yeah, you get much more even bass throughout your entire space by having. But I don't think she does not need 4 subwoofers, Rob.
No, need it, but why? Let's go nuts. I mean, I'm thinking I'm trying to talk her down from $15,000 a pair of speakers to $1,500 a pair of speakers. I'm sure she's going to be like, well, that can't be adequate. I'm like, 4 subs is going to make you feel adequate.
Okay. Well, you don't need 4 subs.
You don't really need 2.
You need 2 subs. And that way you can have somebody else sit in this room with you and have the exact same bass experience that you're having.
Yeah, because you do have a perfect rectangle of a room, the radiator notwithstanding, and I'm not terribly worried about the radiator de-rectangularizing this room. So, I mean, what would be perfect in here? I mean, SB 2000s from SVS would be overkill in this size.
Yeah, I was going to say I would definitely get a sealed sub. Yep. I would probably get the SB 1000s because they're the smallest ones.
But
I mean, you could get the 2000s.
Technically play flat down to 20 hertz. So, I mean, she's got the budget.
Yeah, clearly. And that's fine. So, yeah, if you wanted to overkill it, SB 2000s would be fine. 2 of those.
What is that? $1,300 for a pair of those?
Yeah, she
so
could stack them on top of each other until all the way to the ceiling.
That's right.
She's still not paying as much.
And I mean, if you wanted to get 4 of them, that's another $1,300. So we're talking about somewhere between $2,900 and $4,200, which is definitely less than you were going to spend on just the pair of the towers. And you're getting the same series of speakers, just the bookshelf version, which is much more reasonable for your room size, and still barely needs any power because they're still a tremendously efficient speakers.
Right.
And then you could get a second pair of those 4306s as your surrounds. You could afford it.
That's true. You could get. You could get a fifth one and put underneath your TV or whatever.
And I was like, maybe she's just not going to be able to be like, SVS is good enough for music. I promise you they are. Because sound is sound. Yes. Bass is bass.
And not only that, I mean, it should be speaking her language anyways. If she's the audiophile type, I'm not saying that you are, Iris, but if you are the audiophile type, somebody's probably told you that sealed subs are better than ported anyways for music. And guess what? You know what? Sound does not know when it's playing music versus playing movies. It doesn't know. It doesn't. That subwoofer doesn't go, oh crap, is this a movie? Oh, oh God. Oh God. I'm not ready for this.
Act differently.
I'm not ready for this. I can't take it. The pressure is too much.
Let's say you just have to have the website with the language that talks about being really great for music. That's the only way you can get your head into using subwoofers instead of full range speakers. Then go over to Rhythmic and get a couple of F12s.
It's a 16-inch cube.
It's a 16-inch cube. They're a little under $1,000 once the shipping is included. You can still easily afford a pair of those and a pair of the 4306 JBL Synthesis bookshelf speakers. Yeah, there you go.
So she's got some past labs amplification. If you don't know what that is, it's because you can't afford it. Stuff is expensive, but it is so pretty. They get crazy hot and use a ton of electricity, plus they're huge and very heavy.
Yep.
Yeah. So she's planning to sell those and put funds towards outfitting the full theater setup. Let me tell you right now, you're going to buy everything for what you sell those past labs for. Anything that we tell you, you get the whole thing.
We're talking about a projection setup, so.
Okay, so projection, it's sans high-end screen / projector, so everything but the projector. The if you get a high-end screen and the projector, All right. The front left and right speakers will be their own separate purchase. That's the $15,000 for those things. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not playing that game.
We're spending much less.
We're going to spend much less. So now you've got more money to spend on other things. Probably a car. So she's planning on having a budget of $10,000 max for everything else: screen, projector, all the other speakers, AV receiver, etc. So her total budget is $25,000.
Well, no, because she wasn't going to spend $15,000. She was looking for a demo pair that was discounted.
Okay,
like I say, I don't know exactly how much, but
let's call it 15 then total, all in. 15.
Yeah, that's very conservative.
That's very, very conservative. I doubt it's really probably closer to 1,750. I would think that her floor model is not going to be more than 50%.
2/3 off, but very conservatively, at least $15,000 for everything.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would we recommend getting new? Would we recommend getting new separate amplifiers? No. Or can an AV receiver handle things on its own? Yes. Seems a bit disconcerting to go from pure Class A pass labs amps to a mass market AV receiver. Yes, girlfriend, you're going to have to really wrap your head around this. First of all, the reason they are so hot and so heavy is they are full pure Class A. Class A, 25% efficient max.
If that, yeah.
Max.
They are just running full bore all the time that they are on, and if it's not making sound, it's just turning it into heat.
All the electricity that's going in there, every bit that you put into it, 75% minimum is exiting through the top of that thing as heat.
Probably more like 80 or 85%.
Yeah. That's why I'm being conservative on that too. Oh my God, why did I not take a shower before this podcast? I am so itchy. All right, so stupid haircut. I was fine before this. I didn't even know this.
Okay, so the speakers that you want, which by the way I love, so JBL Synthesis speakers, you need about 0.3 of a watt to hit full reference volume in this room at your seating distance.
So anything.
An AV receiver that we're going to recommend, and we're going to recommend a Denon or Marantz to you, no problem.
None whatsoever. No receiver on the market would ever have a problem powering
This is like negative problem territory.
Yes. Could there be a noise level issue? Probably not. But you're with highly efficient speakers, you have to worry a little bit more about that. But I would be very surprised if you ran into this, because you're not going to be trying to power, 11 speakers through this receiver. You're going to be powering 5 or 7, and you're going to be done.
Maybe as many as 9.
Maybe as many as 9, but still, they're going to.
It'll be fine. Do not worry. You do not need a separate amp in this setup.
There will never be a capacitor that is empty in this receiver. They will always have time, have extra power. So did I skip anything? Yeah. C. So yes. Okay. So recommend. No, you do not need separate amplification for sure. An AV receiver will be fine, and I don't think we can talk about that yet until we know until we get to the point where we know how many speakers she's going to do, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's just go. In order. We'll
so she's got a 2016 LG OLED. She'd like whatever is closest to being the projector equivalent of that. Right? Nothing that's close. So what would we recommend? I mean, we talk about it all the time on this podcast, but JVCs are the ones with the best black levels. And that's what you're enjoying most about your LG.
And the highest native contrast, meaning they can have black right next to peak white at the exact same time. You don't need local dimming to do it. You don't need to pump the lamp to do it. They can just inherently have that high contrast.
And I'm going to warn you, Iris, just a little bit here, because I feel this constantly. And my projector setup is very nice. I really like my projector. It does a fantastic job. But when you go see a really well calibrated, well set up, direct view flat panel display, you kind of look at your projector and go, "It's good."
I mean, honestly, you could get a 77-inch OLED. They're $8,000, but since we saved you so much money on the front, left, right speakers, you probably have the room to spend $8,000 on a 77-inch OLED. That could be a consideration.
I'm gonna say that you should at least consider that.
Okay.
Because I do not believe, if you are as discriminating as I believe that you are, if you've done all this other stuff for this high-end equipment, then if you're as discriminating as I think that you are, I think you're going to look at that projector, no matter how good it is, and go, "It's not as good. I wish I had my flat screen."
Yeah, it's $8,000 77-inch OLED could be in there. I will say, if you do decide to go projector, I was going to recommend to you a 92-inch screen.
Yeah. That's one thing you won't be able to get with an OLED, is you will not be able to get a huge screen like that.
Not that size. 77 is where they top out.
Yeah. So that's the other consideration.
But the only question would be which of the JVC models, because it's going to be a JVC now. I would probably suggest just getting an X790. You can get them for $4. I would highly recommend contacting AVScience.com, my dealer, especially for JVC projectors. But yeah, you can get it for about $4,000 now. Now, if you are super bothered by the long handshaking time, I mean, again, I'm talking about spending $8,000. So 77-inch OLED or $8,000 for one of the brand new one, the genuine 4K. That would be the NX7 that has just been announced at CEDIA. It's the genuine 4K. It's got the faster handshaking. It still has the super high contrast, the full DCI P3 color. But yeah, JVC projector is the way to go. $4,000 or $8,000, you decide.
There you go. So since the room is so narrow, she's thinking it would make the most sense to have all the gear and front speakers positioned behind a drop-down screen. But 2-channel music is still top priority, so the front, left, and right speakers need to remain optimally positioned, not shoved up against the wall. So she's thinking the screen might be about 3 feet into the room to give adequate space for the speakers behind it. That would leave a roughly 10.5 feet or so, maybe an 8-foot viewing distance with about 2.5 feet of space to the back wall. What do we think of that layout? It's fine.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely reasonable to me.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
But if you sit a little bit closer, you could go 77-inch OLED.
I was going to say, you could push a chair up and that screen suddenly gets real big. But if you are going for like that really big screen, you want the drop down and you want the acoustically transparent screen and everything behind it and all that stuff, you want that experience, that's fine. I just want to make sure that you're considering that. I don't necessarily think that no matter how great the projector is, it just can't, one to one
do the light output of an OLED. No,
it can't do that, and it can't just turn off sections of itself. There's always a little light hitting those black areas.
Little bit, yeah.
So what screen should she get? Well, you should definitely get a Seymour AV screen, and that's
you definitely want the ultra fine. You want their ultrafine because you are sitting in the range where you need the ultrafine if it's going to be acoustically transparent. They have very nice retractable screens. Again, I would go for the one that's, I think they always go by width, so they don't have exactly a 92-inch diagonal, but they have something very close that's about $1,500 for motorized, retractable, acoustically transparent with the ultrafine fabric.
So where are we at here? So we've got subwoofers, $1,400 if you get the SVS subs, right?
Okay.
With the
$1,500 for the front, left, rights.
So that's $2,900, right? And then we've got how much for the projector?
At least $4,000.
$4,000. So 29. So that's 33. And then the screen is how much?
We're at $6,900. 4,000 plus 2,900.
4,000. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so 6,900 plus about 1,500 for the screen here. So we're at 8,400.
8,400. All right. So which receiver or processor plus amps? Never, not going to happen. Do we know exactly how many speakers she wants to do here? I mean, the max she could do is 5.4
theoretically. Yeah, if you want 4 subs.
The max you could do is that. So you would have 9 speakers to power. Yeah. Max. Because you're not going to, if you're sitting at 40, that's fine. The X4400H would be good. With 2.5 feet behind you, I'm a highly recommend you not do surround back speakers.
Which was exactly her next question, and I'm in total agreement with that. So 5.4.4 would be the maximum setup. X4400H, even brand new, it's $1,000 now. So we're at 90.
I'm going to straight up remind you, Iris, that we are. The surround experience is great. The Atmos experience is many times underwhelming for people. So maybe not immediately go all the way to Atmos.
But if you get the X4400, you've got the option to do so at any time.
That's right.
So that's still a great buy. It's still a great receiver. So yeah, we're at $9,400 total now.
Okay, so in-ceiling speakers aren't part of the plan, but speakers mounted on the ceiling are totally doable. Overkill to do Atmos in here? She's all for it if we think it would work. It would definitely work. I mean, it would function. I don't know, again, how much you'll enjoy it, but you could do, you could actually do elevation speakers, prime elevation speakers in the front wall and the back wall.
I suppose you could. Yeah, room's small enough. I was also thinking focal little birds, which easily mount to your ceiling and can angle whatever direction you need.
Yeah,
and they're not expensive.
I guess the reason why I kind of like in this application, she's sitting close enough to the back wall where they make top rears make a perfect sense right back where they are, and they're easy to place, and they're kind of not hanging down from the ceiling.
Yeah, prime elevations as top rears. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then up front you could do top fronts or top whatever they call it.
Yeah, or front heights.
Yeah, front heights.
Okay. So we're right around $10,000 now if you get those speakers.
Yeah.
And then another let's say we go for another pair of the JBLs as your surrounds. So we're up to $1,150 or $11,500.
Yeah, if it's just you in this room, you don't need a center channel. I mean, you can just skip
that.
Not
really, no.
Yeah, you can just skip that. And we already know you like 2 channels, so you should be placed optimally for stereo imaging. So there's no reason why you need a center channel. Boy, there's somebody right now rolling over, just like throwing their phone out.
You can also get another one of those bookshelf speakers, and you've got the.
It's not always easy to do that, but I guess it's possible.
Oh, you can get it from a JBL synthesis dealer. Yeah, that's not a problem.
So what's the final speaker complement going to be? What's going to deliver killer 2-channel music listening and a killer movie experience that will work in the small room with her desired projection setup? Well, we told you. So that's what's going to work.
Now you could. So we got you up to 11,500. That was with 2 pairs of the JBL synthesis bookshelf speakers. That's with 2 of the SVS SB 2000 subwoofers. That was with 4 overhead speakers, be they prime elevations or focal little birds. You decide which ones you like the better looks of. An X4400H AV receiver, Seymour AV screen. Now you could potentially be spending an additional $4,000 if you want to go for the $8,000 NX7 or a 77-inch OLED, which is also $8,000. So that gets you up to what, $15,500. I think we're like bang on target, aren't we? And that's with an $8,000 display.
Yeah.
Or actually, if you went OLED, you'd minus the screen cost, wouldn't you? So you're down to $14,000 there.
That's right.
If you go OLED, 77-inch.
Carl. First up, Carl is happy to hear that JVC has addressed the super slow HDMI handshaking of the projectors, although we still have to wait to see just how much faster the new 4K models are. We stated that the new 4K models do not have HDMI 2.1 inputs. Would HDMI 2.1 make the handshaking even faster? There's no guarantee of that, man. I don't think I don't think it has much to do with that part of it. I think it's got to do with how fast the processor and stuff that's inside the projector is, and it has very little to do with whether or not it's HDMI 2.0. Because if that were the case, then universally, you would see consistency across the different HDMI the devices that had HDMI, and that's clearly not the case with these JVCs. So there you go.
It could have been like, hey, there were JVCs that were HDMI 1.4. Will the ones that have HDMI 2.0 be faster? It was like, nope, they're actually even slower. So
so we appreciate our explanation of why HDMI 2.1 isn't even necessary on these new 4K models. But what about the 8K eShift NX9? Wouldn't that need HDMI 2.1 if you ever want to feed an actual 8K signal?
Well, you can't.
You can't. So yeah, where are you going to feed it from?
Not only, but this is very similar to the first eShift models that came out that were 1080p panels that wobbled to pseudo 4K. They couldn't accept a 4K signal.
They still can't.
So it's the first generation. This is the first ever 8K eShift, and it cannot accept an 8K signal. Can't do it.
And just, this is the early adopter types. They're going to buy this stuff because it's the first 8K thing, and then when they get an actual 8K, source 4 years from now,
they'll upgrade their projector.
They'll upgrade their projector as well. They'll probably already have done it twice. Jackson, what time is it? Feels later.
We got about a little over half an hour to go.
When Jackson moved a few years ago, he sold his Panasonic plasma TV and used only a projection setup for a while. For the past few months, he's been using a Vizio LCD TV that he's borrowing from a friend. But he'd like to let his friend have it back. Jackson isn't quite sure what he should do moving forward. I think this is where I ran out of questions, or I ran out of time to read questions. So we'll see. He likes his motorized 92-inch projection screen. He sits about 8 feet away, which is good. I think
sounds familiar. Yeah.
And a 50 to 55-inch LCD looks awfully small by comparison. He also likes the cool factor of pressing a button, having the screen descend from the ceiling. That is pretty cool. But his existing projector is 720p model, resolution DLP model, with its original lamp, so it's probably dim as heck. Furthermore, he hasn't been able to keep both the projector and the 1080p flat panel connected to his Denon receiver at the same time. No matter what, his sources all default to outputting 720p resolution if his projector is connected, even when it's powered off.
Yeah, we have heard this scenario before.
This is a known issue, and that's not an issue. It's actually it's protection, really.
I guess, because lowest common denominator at all times.
Yes. Well, I mean, let me tell you, when my brother upgraded his PlayStation, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it automatically set itself to 1080p on one, and I switched it to his 720p TV, and it did not default to the lowest common denominator. My parents were like, "It's broken." I'm like, "No, it's not broken. It's just not as user friendly as you want it to be." So I'm sorry. I agree that it's very annoying.
It is, inconvenient.
But it is not. It is annoying because you are a person that you are, not that. I think most of the people in the world appreciate that that it says, okay, whatever's the one that everybody can play nice with, that's the one I'm going to send out. Okay, bye. So it's time for an upgrade, but what would we suggest he do moving forward? The new 75-inch Vizio P Series TV with 4K resolution HDR is only $2,100. He could move his couch closer to keep a large field of view, but that would use up his budget, so it would have to be his only display. So what is the obvious thing for him to do? Or is there an alternative, better way to spend his budget? Some way to keep both a projector and a flat panel. Yeah, so about this. I have had a similar setup where it drops down in front of my TV, and I like that.
Yeah,
I like it a lot. And it
is quite nice. Yeah,
it is convenient. I don't now. He needs to upgrade his projector, like 100%.
If he's keeping a projector, that's the whole thing. He's like, he could ditch the projector entirely and just get a nice 75-inch HDR 4K TV.
But he wants that cool factor? Is that what
He wants the cool factor of the screen coming down, and I don't blame you. And a 92-inch screen is still significantly larger than a 75-inch screen.
Yeah, but you move your couch closer, it's not going to make any difference.
Same field of view.
Wow, this is a tough one. I don't know what I would do. Because basically you can spend similar amounts of money.
Yes.
And get the 75-inch TV or a new projector.
Or a new projector that also does HDR.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dude, if I were you, I'm telling you, I would get a coin and I would flip it and say, it's a projector. Tails, it's the thing. And if you're disappointed when it comes down, you know which one you really want. Because I think this is 6 of one, half dozen of another. I think I could go either way on this. Because I've lived with my projector set for such a long time, I would love the opportunity to go to a direct view for a while. You know, I think I would be really super down with that.
But you would definitely miss the size.
I would have to move it closer. Yes, I would move it closer.
So for right around $2,000, there is the brand new Epson Home Cinema 4010. That is the brand new model. It is the wobbled thing, but it'll accept a 4K signal. This new one, the $2,000 one, has the full 18 gigabits per second on its HDMI input, so you can do 4K 60 on this thing. That's nice because the previous model was limited to 4K 30. But that's the 4010, the Home Cinema 4010 from Epson. It is $2,000. It accepts 4K resolution. It wobbles a 1080p panel to do it. Full DCI-P3 color, HDR support, $2,000. There you go. That could be your new projector. It does all the things. Now, could you have an HDR 4K compatible projector and a flat panel, both of them 4K, both of them HDR? It actually is possible.
Yeah.
Because you could get...
Yeah, you have to go with something smaller, though. It's going to be like a 55-inch.
It would have to be a 55-inch for the flat panel. Yeah, but that's what he's living with right now. He's living with a 55-inch flat panel plus a drop-down projector screen. So if that's what you want, but you want them both to be 4K and HDR, you could get TCL's 55-inch R615 from Best Buy. That's $600, which is amazing when you think about it. 55-inch HDR 4K television.
My parents' 55-inch plasma was like $2,600. I think $2,800 or something like that when they bought it. That's Samsung.
And then you could get the Home Cinema, the Epson Home Cinema 4000. That is the model that the 4010 is replacing. Like I say, it is limited to 4K 30. It doesn't have 18 gigabits per second on its HDMI inputs, but it still does take a 4K signal. Everything other than Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk will be perfectly fine. Still full DCI-P3 color, still HDR support, and it's down to $1,500 now. So $1,500 plus $600 is $2,100 to have a 55-inch flat panel and the Home Cinema 4000 from Epson. So you could get both for the same price as the single 75-inch Vizio P Series TV. I like Tom's idea. You pick the option out of a hat, and if you're disappointed with it, you throw that one away and you keep picking till you get the one you want, and it'll tell you what you want.
Yeah, because I think any of this could be okay.
Yeah.
Any of this could be okay.
Those are all awesome solutions. Isn't it amazing? Like right around $2,000, this is what you can get these days.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
Josh says he loves the podcast. Thank you. And he wants to learn all he can about audio, especially subwoofers. He wants to feel confident that he's really got a clear understanding about some overarching subwoofer topics. So he'd like us to break them down for him. This is a long question. It's probably going to be our last. A, we often stress room size. We always seem to ask for room dimensions in cubic feet of air. He gets that we want them to match a certain level of output from the subwoofer to the size of the room, but what are the exact figures are we looking for? Do we just go by 100% by the Audioholics Baseaholic figures? If so, does he take the specs listed by a subwoofer manufacturer and translate them into the figures used by Audioholics? No.
I don't go 100% by it, although no. what I do in my head is very similar to what they're doing.
Yeah, so
very, very similar.
Part of it, it's almost for me like a feeling. Like when I look at this, I look at the specs of the sub, I look at the sub, and I'm like, yeah, that's going to fill this amount of space. And it usually is pretty close to right. But the CEA measurements and will give you the actual output that it can actually do. Yeah. And then you can translate that into how big of a room can it fill, how much air can it move in at a reference volume and then that tells you how much space. And yeah, the bassaholics or the audioholic stuff, and most of the room dimension sort of SVS has got their own little thing. Like, this is good for a large room or whatever. Are mostly pretty just.
Oh, I very much like the bassaholic room size guide.
Right.
Talking about, 1,500 cubic feet is a small room. Between 1,500 and 3,000 cubic feet is a medium-sized room. Between 3,000 and 5,000 is a large room. And then over 5,000 is, in bassaholics terms, an extreme room, or I would call it a huge room. I like those very much, and I do more or less go by those as far as room size, thinking in terms of room size. But then further down in the Bassaholics article, they talk about the output level that they're looking for, specifically at 25 hertz individually, and then in the range between 30 and 60 hertz.
Right.
And they're looking for specific figures. So he's like, do I go for those figures exactly? Well, the figures they're listing there, and they explain it throughout the article, but it's not like super intuitive. They're basically taking what will be a ground plane measurement, which is the way CEA 2010 is done, with a distance of 2 meters between the microphone and the subwoofer. And you have to be careful about that, because some of the CEA 2010 measurements that are listed by manufacturers have the reference of the microphone being only 1 meter away.
That's
which
right.
In a ground plane measurement means that it appears 9 decibels louder than if the microphone were 2 meters away. So They can have a much higher looking decibel figure, even though it's only because they moved the microphone a meter closer. So you do have to be very careful about that. But what Audioholics does is they take the 2 meter ground plane measurement, they add 6 decibels to that figure, and they're like, that's what we would expect to get out of that sub in a room. But at a pretty long seating distance. Like, they're referencing it to a 4 meter away seating distance, which I'm like, I don't know how you do that in a 1,500 cubic foot room, unless it's really long and narrow. So
it's more of a hallway than a room, really.
Yeah. So to put it in very simple terms, I do look at the CEA 2010. I pretty much only look at the 20 hertz individual measurement at 20 hertz, because I'm like, everything above 20 hertz is going to be louder.
Yes,
there's no subwoofer that's louder at 20 hertz than everything else above 20 hertz. It's just not the way it goes. So I'm like, I really only care about 20 hertz. And if it can hit 100 decibels at the 2 meter ground plane measurement, so microphone 2 meters away, ground plane measurement outdoors, if it can hit 100 decibels at 20 hertz, I'm like, that sub is good for a large room. And like, that's like my line in the sand. Like, if it can do that, it's good for a large room. If it can do more than 100 decibels at 20 hertz, and I'm looking for about 6 decibels more. So if it can do 106 decibels, 2 meter ground plane at 20 hertz, I'm like, then it's great for a huge room. And if it's about 6 decibels quieter, if it can do 94 dB or 92 dB or something like that, then I'm like, okay, that's better for like a small room. Those are the figures I use in my head.
Okay. I just gotta look at the sub and go, oh yeah.
It's about that big. It's about that powerful.
That powerful. Yeah, I can see the amplifier power, see the driver size, and
data-base.com is a great place to look up measurements that list what they do at 20 hertz.
There you go.
2 meter ground plane.
So ported versus sealed. The big picture take on this subject seems to be that ported subs play nice and flat down to the tuning frequency of the port, but then they roll off really steeply below that. Meanwhile, sealed subs tend to roll off at a higher frequency, but it's more gradual, so they can actually play lower than ported subs. Does he have that correct?
Overarching big picture, yes.
Yeah, I suppose that's
but there are exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, that's not like a hard and fast rule, but it's a rule of thumb that I would say was close enough.
Yeah, I mean, so. The big exception is if there's DSP being applied or some other type of filter system built into the subwoofer, because you can
because the EP500 from Axiom is a sub that has a brick wall filter at like 19 hertz. They DSP'd it and said, nope, we're done at 19.
Sealed subs that measure more like what you would expect a ported sub to measure like, because they've boosted the bass output but then rolled it off more steeply, even though it's sealed. So things can change, but in a system that doesn't have a bunch of EQ or filtering applied to it inside the sub itself, what we would expect to see is that there's a tuning frequency for the port. Below that, we would expect it to roll off at a rate of 4 or at a rate of 24 decibels per octave. That's what we would expect to see in a port. Whereas in a sealed sub, we would expect to see that it starts to roll off at a rate of 12 decibels per octave. Right. So it is a much more gradual roll off, and we would expect that it would begin to roll off at a higher frequency than the ported sub. Like if they were both using the same driver and the same amp, but it's just one is in a sealed cabinet and one is in a ported.
See that in the SVS subs. I mean,
yes,
they use
very
the same
much.
driver, the same amp, similar cabinets, and one's ported, one's sealed, and that's exactly what you find.
Yep.
So he says, let's take the ported SVS PB2000 versus the sealed SB2000 as an example. It looks as though the PB2000 falls off a cliff below 17 hertz or so. Meanwhile, the SB2000, even though it isn't as loud as the PB2000 overall, continues to play down to 15 hertz. So if you took the two SB2000s and corner loaded them, would you get better 15 hertz output from the sealed sub versus the ported sub? Well, yes. You still couldn't probably hear it.
Yeah. I mean, so we're talking about like taking two of them, stacking them both on top of each other in one corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd play lower.
They would. It's okay. So remember we talked about this last week too, about the negative 3 dB point and all that, why that's important, because once you get much past that, it becomes such a difference in volume, especially at low bass.
Very low bass, where we hear really poorly.
Yeah, you're just not going to hear it.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear it. Like this thing might play twice as loud at 15 hertz as the PB2000. You'd be like, I heard and felt nothing. Because it might be twice as loud, but it's not that.
I still perceive nothing. The microphone says this is happening, but I perceive nothing. Yeah. So if you look at,
don't get too hung up on these numbers and say, okay, well, because the roll off is more gradual, it actually plays lower, therefore it's a better sub. Nah, because the usable range remains the same, and the usable range of a sealed sub, once again, rule of thumb, tends to be not as far extended as a ported sub of the same with the same capabilities.
Yeah, so a great example, they don't have the results for the PB2000 and the SB2000, but at data-base.com, they do have the predecessors. So they have the PB12 NSD and the SB12 NSD, which are very similar.
Yeah.
The 2000s were the direct replacements for those. And what you'll notice is that, so from everywhere from about above 40 hertz or so, they're essentially identical, which is exactly what we would expect, because it's the same driver and the same amp. And then the SB2000, right around 40, 35 hertz or so, it begins its gradual roll-off. It's about where it starts. Whereas the PB12 NSD remains very flat all the way down to about 25 hertz, and then it starts to get a little bit quieter. Now, what you'll see is that at 25 hertz, the sealed version is now like a good 7 decibels quieter at 25 hertz. Down at 20 hertz, it's like 10 or 11 decibels quieter.
Right.
Down at 16 hertz, it's like, it's still playing, but it's like, I don't know, I think it was still about 10 decibels quieter or something along those lines. Now, the interesting result was they also measured down at like 12 and 10 hertz, and the ported one gave no result. It just couldn't play that low. Like you say, it sort of drops off a cliff below 17 hertz, whereas the sealed one still gave a result, but it was pretty darn quiet.
Right.
So even if you stacked a pair of the sealed ones, well, first of all, you'd need to just to get equal output at 25 hertz. Even with them stacked, you do not equal the output at 20 hertz of the single ported one. Right. And then, you're getting more output at 12 hertz, but you can't hear it.
Right. So he asks, and this question is in light of what we've just said a little bit poorly worded, are there any other advantages to a sealed design versus a ported design? And I would not, like we're talking about here, it's not necessarily an advantage, it's just a design difference. It's a characteristic, right? It is just a difference between them. I would not call the sealed as having a advantage over the ported design. In fact, I would say the ported design has an advantage over the sealed.
In many ways it does. Yes.
And so, no, you've identified the differences.
You will tend to have no group delay in the sealed design, because the sound is purely what's being produced by the driver moving back and forth, whereas in the ported design, some of the output is what the port is contributing, which means there's a lag in time before the port's contribution is added to the driver's contribution and equals whatever the final output is, and that is your group delay. But the counter to that is that the sealed sub, as it tries to play lower and lower, distorts more than the ported sub does. So you have higher distortion but less group delay. And it's like down at those low frequencies, we don't notice that group delay because it's such a long frequency anyway, and we're only ever hearing reflected sound that bounced off a wall before one cycle of the note even finished. So I tend to favor the port.
So if you already have one PB2000, but you want a deeper extension, adding a second PB2000 really wouldn't do anything on that front, correct? Correct.
Correct.
That is right. Yes,
they will both play down to where they play, and then they'll both drop off a cliff.
That's right. Could a single PB4000 deliver deeper extension and more output than a pair of SB2000s?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, deeper extension, 100%, and more output. I mean, if you stack the two SB 2000s, I mean, it's not, you can't just add the two 2000s and make it to a 4000. That's not how it works. No. Yeah. So, yeah, it would not be as loud, not even close.
Again, over at Database, we can see the predecessor to the PB4000, the PB13 Ultra, and even down at 12 hertz, it was like 7 or 8 decibels louder than the SB12NSD.
Right.
Which means that even if you stacked a pair of them, it's not equaling the output all the way down to 12 hertz of the single PB4000. So yeah, one could go deeper and louder.
So is there a law of diminishing returns when it comes to frequency extension?
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about this. I mean, if nothing else, we can't hear below 20 hertz anyhow. So anything below 20 hertz is bass you feel, which is...
And even that is questionable.
It might be neat to experience in a movie theater, but it is something you don't necessarily want to have happen every time, you know, Darth Vader farts on the TV. You know, you want to, you don't want to have that sort of experience.
I mean,
all the time.
Tactile experience of 20 hertz is very, very similar to the tactile experience of 15 or 12 hertz. We don't, it doesn't feel different. All you're feeling is like your chest caving in a bit.
Yeah.
Like it's the same. So I worry about 20 hertz. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, I like a subwoofer that can play down to 20 hertz. And if you can play down to 20 hertz, a lot of times you can play down to 17. So do I really care about the difference between a sub that plays down to 18 versus a sub that plays down to 15? No. I worry that they can get down to 20 flat. If they go past it, great. I don't care. There's nothing down there I can hear anyways. And I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between the 17, the 15, or whatever. Yeah. So, you know, and most of the time, almost all the time, there's no data on any disc that says, hey, play a 15 hertz test.
It's really rare. Yeah. No, I mean, it might not sound like it from listening to this podcast, but the majority of subwoofers do not play flat down to 20 hertz. The ones
that we recommend to,
and that's why we always talk about the same subs.
I know,
because those are the ones.
That do it
at a reasonable price.
Now, I mean, if you come to me like, I really love my sub, and it's this sub, I'm like, well, that plays down to 35. Well, it seems, I mean, like it shakes the house.
Yeah,
like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Just missing 15 hertz of extension that would also shake the house, and you would notice a difference. You would if we put one of our subs in your house, but. Is it mean that you're having a bad experience? No, you got tons of bass. Don't worry about it. So he says if we take the PB2000 versus the SB2000 as examples again, the PB lists its frequency response as 17 hertz to 260 hertz plus or minus 3 dB, while the SB lists 19 hertz to 220 hertz plus or minus 3 dB. But again, the measurement graph shows the SB actually being able to play lower. And then there are also the CEA 2010 measurements that supply different figures. How do you interpret all those figures in order to understand the actual total output of a given subwoofer? Well, I mean, we've kind of covered this, you know, when Rob was talking about the different size rooms. You know, you can look at how much output they get at a specific frequency, and Rob chooses 20 hertz. Audioholics chooses 25, and then that determines how much air they can move. So the fact that they extend lower or whatever is great, but doesn't necessarily inform you of their ability. There is I don't want to call it a subwoofer. There is a device that will play, you know, 1 hertz to 5 hertz. It looks like a fan.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
infrasonic fan.
And you know, would I care that it does this thing? No, I don't. But people are like,
hertz.
Why would I want 1 hertz?
And you don't even hear it. It's just like wind moves every second.
Yeah. So I mean, I appreciate that you're trying to learn about this. So let's focus on the things that are very important here. What's very important, that something can play flat throughout the hearing range that we hear. That's important.
Yeah.
That it extends throughout the entire hearing range. That's important. The amount of output is appropriate to move all the air in your room. That's important. Whether or not it rolls off quickly or slowly past that point, not important. Whether or not it's got a port or a sealed design, not as important. It is important when you're thinking about what sub to buy, because you're like, I cannot fit a PB 4000 in my room because it is 9.5 feet by 13.5 feet. When we were talking to Iris before, we were talking about small subs. We talk about small subs because she's got a small room and she's got to fit everything else in there as well.
Right.
So, if you've got a big room, well, you're going to need a big sub anyhow, but you're still going to have to worry about these other design things that go along with it.
Yeah, worrying about the like the SB seemingly doesn't play as low if you're looking at the plus minus 3 decibel range, right? PB 2000 rated to 17, SB 2000 rated to 19, both plus or minus 3 decibels. But then you see the graph and it's like, oh, but the SB actually keeps making sounds lower than the PB 2000 does. It's like, well, yeah, that's the difference between within a tolerance range versus just response overall. So like, yeah, the SB 2000 is at an even lower frequency than the PB 2000, but the output that's coming out of there is very quiet and you cannot hear it.
No. So all of this boils down to one thing. He replaced his Polk PSW. I did not get this far in this question. His Polk PSW 505 subwoofer for the pair of SVS PB12 NSD subs. Now that he's got a taste of real subwoofers, he wants to know if what he'd have to achieve for another bass upgrade. He's thinking maybe he's missing the bass below 17 hertz, but does that even matter? We're switching over to sealed subs that can play lower, or a much higher output ported sub that can play lower and louder, give him something he's never experienced before with his PB12 NSDs. What's the size of your room? Very first part of his question was like, we're really always asking about the room size, and he asked us a question. It was our first question. What's the size of your room? Because if the PB12 NSDs can move the air that's in your room and adequately pressurize your space, then getting a subwoofer, that sealed subwoofer that can play down to 12 hertz, that at a volume you can't hear anyways, you will experience zero audible difference. In fact, if you took and traded in your PB12 NSDs and got PB6, Ultra, the 16s or whatever they call them, 16 Ultras right now, and you properly calibrated them, you're like, I've got all this, they can play this much louder, they could go this much lower. I will tell you right now, if you are dead honest with yourself, you would go, they sound exactly the same as the PB12 NSDs.
You would have more headroom. Like, objectively, they are capable of playing loud. The PB16 Ultras are capable of playing louder than your PB12 NSDs.
Yeah, for sure.
That is objective truth. But
you would not turn them that loud because it would be too loud.
Yes, then it's unused. It's theoretical headroom. It exists. It's there, but you just never need it, in which case you never hear it or experience it. No, I mean, I get it. This is a disappointing thing. I got this huge upgrade. Is it possible to get an upgrade equal to, or maybe just a little bit less, another huge... No. Nope. You've kind of reached... You're done with what can be done.
You won bass. You won it. You're done. There's nothing else to do there. You just move along. Get a better TV.
Enjoy the system you have. What a crazy idea!
I know.
We get there too, man. I mean, I haven't upgraded subs or speakers in many, many years, which is something I used to do quite frequently because I'm like, I have reached the limits. There's nowhere left to go.
So, okay, subwoofer upgrade tracks. Okay, this is what it looks like. None to a woofer, to a subwoofer of some sort. That is an upgrade that you will notice from a subwoofer that's not very good to a one that's actually good. That plays on the 20 hertz. That's an upgrade you'll notice. Going from 1 to 2, especially if you hadn't placed them properly to begin with, and you do place them properly afterwards, that's an upgrade you'll notice. The next one is nothing. There's nothing else to do.
I mean, 2 to 4, maybe a tiny difference. Like if you really care about a large seating area, potentially.
If you're sitting in more than one seat in your home theater on the regular, and
you are Doctor Strange, you have split yourself into a dozen or more people, and you're all collectively experiencing it at the same time. Yeah,
you might. Sure. Yeah. For Doctor Strange, I will allow it.
That's right.
4 subwoofers for Doctor Strange, but no, there's audible changes, real substantive changes to bass stop when you have them playing down to 20 hertz and they're adequately appropriately placed for your space. That's
have enough output to pressurize your room.
You're done.
Yeah,
you're done.
You can accurately reproduce the signal that is, what's being requested from any soundtrack. You can accurately reproduce it. There's nowhere left to go.
Right. They're done. All right, so that's it. Who we got left?
We have quite a few left.
Oh, good.
But yeah, that's how it's going to go. I was thinking maybe we'd answer one of the shorter ones, but no, we shall answer next week. Richard B. I got to scroll down a bit here. John D. Earl B. Gus, who got in touch with me on Twitter. Chris B. and Nathan D. That's that.
All right, guys, we'll catch up with you next week. And if you have some questions you'd like to have answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Michael for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation. We also want to thank our 72 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, Michael, thank you very much for the PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. Thanks so much to our 72 patrons over there.
We want to thank Rob W. for talking us up to SVS, and also to 2A, who is currently working on our can't run out of bandwidth all the time problem that we need to have solved.
Yep. Rob, congrats on that purchase. Thanks for talking us up to SVS. And 2A, if 2A fixes this, that's a huge thank you.
That is huge.
That is tremendous. Thank you.
I saw A Quiet Place.
Okay.
Have you seen it
yet? I haven't watched
Okay, so new. I mean, it's not as good as the Jurassic Park, surround stuff, but there is some good sound effects in this movie. Yeah, I don't know how atmosphere it was. I'm buying it, but the thing that I liked about it too, and that I think listeners should pay attention to, is that there is Atmos on the Blu-ray release. I don't know if there's an Ultra 4K release, but there's Atmos on the Blu-ray release, so you don't have to buy it.
As there ought to be. There's no technical reason why there can't be, but yeah.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.